But what I want to share with you is a little bit of my story and the story of anxiety and fear and all of that stuff that really plagued me when I was younger. And so I first really recall having fear around people. I know for sure in kindergarten. Oh my gosh, my mom said that I cried the whole day and for the first week, and they tried bringing me to my sister to have her calm me down, and I just didn't like it. I think it was like a sadness that I had, just not being comfortable around people. I just did not know how to feel comfortable, and there was nothing that I could do to change it. And so that kind of followed the pattern up until at some point when I started gymnastics, which was probably like 6th grade, 7th grade. Some of that went away in regards to other people because I was really structured in what I was doing. And so I started doing something that was part of my destiny. I absolutely loved gymnastics. And when I dove into that piece of my story, there was no fear in the gymnastics, right? There was just fear in having to overcome competing in front of other people. And so still, just that anytime I ever had to do anything in front of other people, I just had to overcome what I'm going to say is almost like a physiological response. Does anybody kind of get that? Have you ever experienced where your body's just not cooperating with what you want it to do? Because the truth is, I didn't have like a known fear. Like there weren't thoughts in my head that I had these things. This was just my body, the physiological response of what happened in my body, the trembling, the heart palpitations, the sweaty palms, the thing that got stuck up in my throat. Walking this out in my life, it enhanced in the teen years, right? That is really when all of us begin to enter into leaving childhood, going into adulthood. And I think that's the normal time that what is a struggle can become a bigger struggle. And so I remember walking the hallways of high school specifically, being just, not having anything to say to anyone, afraid of all kinds of things. But again, it was like my body somehow was the one that was leading, not necessarily what my thoughts thought. Okay. The very first panic attack I had was trying out for the cheerleading squad, going from 9th grade, junior high school years into Winter Park High School in 10th grade. And during that summer going into 10th grade, I tried out for cheerleading. And, I was a gymnast. So anyone who knows that, a gymnast is pretty much a shoo-in. I was a really good gymnast. And so the tricks, the jumps, all of the mechanical side of cheerleading, I was probably one of the best ones that was there. However, in the middle of trying out, I panicked and no voice came out. And so here I am doing all of these, all the things you need to do, and like nothing came out, and it was sheer panic. And so I did not make it. And I never really said anything, never got help, never told anyone other than those that were there, saw it and experienced it. Nobody really even asked me. It's just weird, right? These are some of the weird things. People just don't know what to do when people panic. And so I just carried on. The next moment of what I would call panic attack, which was public, was in my senior year. I was part of a pageant and had to give a speech as part of the pageant in front of like all the family, right? Like probably, I don't know how many hundreds of people, but it was a lot of people. And I had it memorized, I had it rehearsed. And as soon as I took the stage, physiologically, nothing came out of my mouth. And I just sat there like a deer in headlights, literally just sat there looking like a deer in headlights at the audience. And, they had us write out our speech, and the lady that was probably down maybe 10 feet from me had my speech. So she was like yelling parts of it to me so that I could catch on and grab it. And if any of you have ever experienced a panic attack, then what happens is you can't hear. So it doesn't matter that she's yelling. So now I have this lady yelling, and I have my brain trying to figure out what's happening, because I'm just standing there looking at everybody, and nothing came out of my mouth. It was horrifying. So then I just walked away from that situation. Nothing was even said. Like, what's happening with you? Nothing. And then the next time that I had a full out panic attack in front of people was when I was at UCF in University of Central Florida in the college speech class, which is a required class in order to pass. In order to pass and graduate, you have to take speech. And so there I am going up my very first speech. And, it was literally just like a Jack and Jill poem. It was just to get used to speaking in front of people. And as soon as I went up in front of the class, it happened again. But now it's a really small class, so it's even more awkward. It was so awkward. Oh, honestly, it was probably as awkward for everyone else that was there as it was for me. If any of you have ever experienced anyone having a full-blown panic attack, it can be excruciating for everyone that's there. And really nobody knew what to do to help me. But when I went in front, right, it's just a small, like 20, 25 people class. And so I get in front, I'm holding my paper, and I'm like trying to read it, and my eyes are blurry. My heart again is beating. My hands are starting to sweat, and my hands are shaking holding the paper. And oh my gosh, I remember looking at the door to run out of this classroom, which was on my left. And I'm like, just run, like this is excruciating. And yet my purse was over there to the right. And I was not in a place where I could bolt out the door, because trust me, I so wanted to run out that door and never come back. And anyways, I literally, nobody came, nobody said anything. The teacher never said anything. What felt like minutes, right, in a numbing blank state is horrifying. But eventually the words started coming, and I was able to just get them out. And it sounded, of course, like that sort of thing. I just got them out. And then I went and sat down at the table, and class was almost over. And as soon as I walked out of that classroom, I went straight to the registrar, and I literally withdrew and said, I can't do this. And I just didn't know what else to do. And so anyways, shortly after that, I realized I needed help and saw an ad on TV. So my first help of rewriting my story came from a TV ad that said, if you have these symptoms, then you might have panic disorder. And so I went to see a counselor, and one of the first things that he had me do in the rewriting of my story was begin to unpack all of the stuff that had me stuck. And so I'm just going to give you guys some great tips as you rewrite your story. One of them, he said, take out a roll of toilet paper and just begin to write down all of the things that you've never said. And so backstory of rewriting my story, right, is that this anxiety and all of this stuff that was happening to me was a result of just fear that was never talked about, never dealt with. I had a pretty fearless mother who loved the public, who loved talking to people, who was out in front of people constantly all the time. And so, so there was no real understanding on her part to even get what was going on with me. But as I kind of take it back, it goes all the way back into the root of prior to even being conceived through Freemasonry. And my grandfather was a Freemason. And so in that, there are occult practices. And, long story short, I went to all the counseling. I did all the mindset stuff. I went to Tony Robbins. I chopped boards. I jumped off of trees in the redwood forest. I did everything that I possibly could, right? I did everything to try to break through my fear. everything. But I still had to manage it until I got to the spiritual root of it, because we are spirit, soul, and body. And even though my body was the one that was physiologically responding, it was stuck back in a place that was rooted in my childhood. And so, and really just in my family line, right? And so this managing it, I did as long as I could until, all right, I ended up going through a freedom session. And in that freedom session, I took these moments, I took all these panic moments of trying out for the cheerleading and at the college, and just invited Jesus to come into the setting, into my story, into the place. And when I invited him in, everything was different. Everything changed. All of a sudden, I did not see myself as someone who had anxiety and panic disorder, but I saw myself resting in him, and I saw myself at peace. But more than that is I was able to see the root of it and ask him, where is this rooted? And literally it was in the very core of who I was. So that Freemasonry is something that needs to be handled. And so we can go to a counselor, we can learn all these management techniques, we can overcome in all of these ways that we try the best that we can. I took anti-anxiety medication and was still anxious, right? And so because of my giftings and the natural bent of who God created me to be, I pushed through this. Like, I pushed through this. At any chance I could, I said yes to speaking in public. Even in almost every career I've had and everything I've done, I've ended up speaking in public. And I had to overcome it every single time. I would literally talk to myself. I would talk myself through it. Sometimes in the middle of speaking in front of other people, I would lose track and I would forget what I was saying. One time I was actually with the company, which I have some friends on from that company today, when I was with Beauty Control. And there was a time on stage where the vice president called me up to speak, and I looked out at the audience and that's what I saw. I was the deer in the headlights, and she's asking me questions. And I literally was like this. Like, I think words might have come out, but I have no idea what I said. And it was just the physiological response of fear. Okay. So I managed it. I changed my state according to Tony Robbins. I did everything. I read all the books. But at the end of the day, guys, if there's a spiritual root that is connected in part of your story, then you got to go all the way back there. And so that's what I did. I went all the way back and just forgave my grandfather for being part of the Freemasons. And I repented myself for partnering with the fear associated with it, because that's part of spiritual freedom, is forgiving and repenting. And just asked Jesus to remove and release the very roots of fear that were connected to my being, and then removing the physiological fear that was stored in my body to respond that way, all the way from the amygdala in my brain. That's where we store fear. The fight or flight response is here in the amygdala. And even just asking Jesus to release and pull from me all remnants that are not my identity, that are not my destiny, that are counterfeits that came against me, that I don't have to struggle with the rest of my life. And so the good news is I don't anymore. I don't even have to think about it. I don't even have to manage it anymore. Okay. And why do I even share this with you? Because if I can rewrite my story, then you can rewrite your story. I want to bless you today. I bless you, and I bless your spirit to arise. I bless your spirit to shine brightly, knowing that you are created in the image of God. I bless your spirit to arise and come over your soul and come over your body, to lead you into the truth about who God designed you to be. I bless your spirit to take hold of the favor that God has for you in your life, to know that you are the apple of his eye. And I bless your spirit to awaken to the very sound of heaven, the very heartbeat of your Heavenly Father, so that everything that you do comes from knowing that you abide in Him, that you are in Him, and that He is in you, which is super cool. And so when you know who you are as a child of God, when you know that you're loved and that nothing else quite compares, then you will be able to arise and shine and let your light go out to be a city set on a hill without the fear and the worry of what anybody else is going to think.